Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Karl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion, or we want to be contemplative, or simply ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to welcome you to our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that resonate with our fellow friends and seekers here in the desert.
Our hope is that you will find life for your body, soul, and spirit.
And now, here is our show. Before we get started with today's guests, let's check in with Karl and JD.
Hey, welcome back to Karl and Jordan, or Joey and JD if you prefer. Enter your vote wherever you think I'll see it. I don't know where it would be. So,
might need to start a Facebook poll or something.
So you have, in Taiwan you have Bud Light, right? No?
We don't have Bud Light. We only have Bud Heavy.
Bud Heavy.
People love drinking Budweiser, but there's only Bud Heavy. There's no Bud Light. There's
Wait, I'm going to interject. I know this is a JD and Joey show, but is that for real? Are you for real? Like, it's called Bud Heavy?
I thought he said Bud Heavy.
I think
that would be a different problem.
That's the colloquial term.
No, seriously.
I mean, it's not labeled Bud Heavy, but it's not Bud Light. We don't really do light beers in this country.
Okay.
Because we're a country that loves our freedom.
But as long as you're not
moving there.
Butt heavy.
Oh gosh.
How you feeling today? I'm a little butt heavy.
Hey, I mean,
don't body shame, man.
Heavy. See, that could go two ways. That could mean you have a impressive derriere, and that would be quite all right for me.
Admired.
But that's as far as we'll take that. But it could also mean that you got to like dump or something, and that's not as fun.
Yeah. I can't see it working out good in either way. How you feeling?
I agree
butt
with
heavy.
Mom. Let's not body shame, but
right.
It's probably a better word than butt.
So the reason I brought that up is because Bud Light's in a scandal here in the U.S. You know, with partnering with Dylan Mulvaney as a trans activist, and so the new bottles, what are they made of? I don't know. They're shiny.
It's like an aluminum or something, isn't it?
Yeah, the shiny aluminum bottles now have the Pride colors. For Pride Month, they're going to have, those Pride colors. So people in the United States, of course, are making videos, where they're taking all their Bud Light, out in their backyard and AR-15ing it into oblivion. So I'm not sure what this Kid Rock did a video like that where he used to F Anheuser-Busch and F Bud Light, and I don't know why I'm saying F either, because I'm able to say that word. It's just still not natural.
It is Easter Sunday.
And it is Easter, have some reverence.
You still got those hang-ups, and it is the day that our
Lord and Savior Jesus Christ raised from the dead.
Yeah, so
hashtag Zombie Jesus Day.
So all of these people are gonna destroy all their Bud Light. In 3 weeks, they're gonna buy more because they're gonna go
buy more. No, that's. Do you remember when they did this with Colin Kaepernick too? They burned all their Nike gear. I'll never wear Air Force Ones again. And then two months later, it's like, well, it looks like you've restocked your wardrobe there, bud. So thanks for giving money to the people that produce all this clothing and Malaysian sweatshops.
So
I don't know.
And
it's nonsense.
The story's going to be, see, we got them to do it. They're back to the regular cans now, so I can get behind that because now Budweiser is anti-trans. So all the deep stuff about why they need to throw a fit over this is ridiculous. and it's just something you don't understand. But you're going to destroy your Bud Light. Then in 3 weeks you're going to buy more when this rainbow thing is over. And so the winner is Anheuser-Busch, I think.
The winner is Anheuser-Busch, and I think I mean it is the capitalization of these sorts of like movements and stuff, which is, I also think, maybe not equally but similarly gross in a lot of ways, because maybe it is from the right place of the heart, but in a lot of times I think it's just trying to capitalize on something and make money off of it. But that's, I mean, if you love capitalism, most people support the LGBT community in general. So that's also called democracy. So if you hate capitalism, you hate democracy. I don't know. I mean, I guess they would probably move towards fascism, but I would say you could move to like a communist country. Yeah,
and they may be marketing towards trans and queer people, but they're also, marketing to you, when they, I don't know, a country picnic with Bud Light, they're marketing to you also, you redneck,
I mean, yeah, that's the other thing, is that we have this sort of like country representation with half of the commercials where they're at a NASCAR event, or they're at like a country picnic or a bonfire. Like, guess what? There's your representation. So if a bunch of people get their like token month of the year, then calm yourself. Okay, you get the rest of the year. You get 11 months. They get one. It's you're gonna be all right, Snowflake.
Yeah, indeed.
And now back to the Desert Sanctuary podcast with Karl and Laura Forehand. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary. I'm Laura Forehand. Grateful that you are here tonight. I'm here with Karl Forehand, and we have a guest who needs no introduction, but I will introduce him.
Okay.
So, but before we get to that, you want to talk about what's going on?
Well, I was just going to say, for this podcast, there's kind of a couple of ways to do podcasts. You can write the whole agenda down and then follow the agenda and get to it. Or you can just start with no agenda and just start talking. But I don't think we've done either one of those tonight. I think we're confused. We don't even know what we're going to do at all. I mean, so this is some kind of wild, off the tracks podcast episode.
It's okay.
So I'm going to let Jason introduce himself. Like Laura said, he needs no introduction.
The one, the only Jason
Elam.
Hello, welcome. I'm welcoming you to my show because I'm so used to doing this on this side of the microphone. I'm really glad to be back with you guys. I love you both. It's good to see your faces, and I'm glad that you all seem to be doing so well. Laura, I know you're looking forward to summer vacation.
Yeah.
And a new job.
Yes, I have a new job.
Wow.
Still teaching, different grade, different school. So, yeah.
Good changes, though, right?
Yeah, good changes.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Karl. Thanks for inviting me back.
Yeah. We have had, do you know how many conversations we've had?
We've had a few.
Yeah. I would say a dozen or so.
That sounds right.
Something like that.
That's just on your show, though. You got to add the ones on our show also. So we've probably hit a couple of dozen.
Yeah.
All good, though.
Of course. You try to explain that to people. When I was talking to Seth Price, I said, when you interview someone, if you're really, if you're listening, do you feel intimacy? Like we went from not friends to friends all of a sudden? And he said, yeah, if you're doing it right.
Well, that's how you know you're doing it right.
Yeah. Just because, I said once, instead of preaching so much and listening to sermons, we should have been listening to each other.
Yeah.
All that time in church that we spent just listening to each other, I think we might be better.
Absolutely.
But people don't believe that's a solution. Have a Zoom session and talk to each other and listen. That's too simplistic, I guess, or something.
Well, don't you think though that church has conditioned us against that? We've got this mindset of we've got to go to the sacred space to hear the sacred superstar, to receive the word of the divine into our lives, when the reality is the divine was waiting for us in each other the whole time.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even if you go back to the Old Testament, which I try hardly ever to do, but if you go back to the Old Testament, the original intention in the story is God called all the people of Israel to the mountaintop. And they saw the lightning and they heard the thunder and said, Moses, why don't you go and you hear God, and then we'll do whatever you say. Mm-hmm. And so for thousands of years, we've been doing that in the church now, and it doesn't work any better for us than it worked for them. Yeah. But the reality is, if the divine could speak through a burning bush, the divine can speak through Karl Forehand, or Laura Forehand, or our kids, our grandkids.
In there. That's a donkey.
I was purposely avoiding Balaam's ass.
That would be me. Jason, I want to talk a little bit about where you are. This is called Stories from the Desert. So, how would you describe the place you are? Because an evangelical can only understood, fully present, fully obedient, or backslidden, or whatever. But where are you? What's it like where you're at, spiritually speaking?
Well, I think I'm at the end of a 4-year healing session where I went to the beach and I watched the sunset, and I learned how to meditate just by watching the sunset. I'm not good. I was never, even in the church, I wasn't a good prayer. No. I didn't enjoy reading the Bible for hours on end. That was never fun for me. I would act like I was good at it because that's what they expected of the pastor, right? But I was never good at it. And so I had to bring my wounds to the beach and just sit down where I could not add anything to the conversation, where I had nothing to say. And I just sat down beside my wife and I watched the sun go down. And that was it. And I learned from that to find a place of peace that I could tap into. And after a couple of years, I could tap into that place of peace even when I wasn't sitting at the beach watching the sun go down. And so I've learned just what you would call presence, Karl. I've learned that from you, from the sunset, and from my wife, But for me, that started with surrender, right? Because I was busy chasing the church dream, wanted to build a big church and have all the people in town coming, and wanted to be the hip, new, exciting thing that we were always going to be different from the other churches because I wanted to be cooler than the other pastors. But when I got to the end of that, and I just said to my wife, to Brandi, we've chased my dream all this time, and it hasn't panned out very well. So let's chase yours. And we moved to the beach. Mm-hmm. And that was her dream. That's where she's always wanted to be. And so we've been here for 4 years. And every chance we get, we go, we sit on the beach, we watch the sun go down. And it's just taught us to live at peace. And, I'm not saying we have perfect peace in every instance all the time. I don't know anybody who has that. If you find them, you should record as many episodes as possible with them because we need to learn from that person. But I'm kind of coming up on a 4-year, the end of my 4-year healing journey, and we're about to move away. We're not going to be close to the beach anymore. We'll actually be moving to the center of the storm near Disney World, and all that entails, and all the tourism and all the craziness. But somehow I feel like the peace is going to follow us there. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really grateful for that.
I think that's because peace doesn't come from outside of you, which is kind of what, and at least in our story, that's what the church wanted you to believe, right? That peace was out there somewhere. It was in this invisible, unseen God. And you just had to follow the right rules and do the right things, and you would have that. But then if you didn't, it was like, well, what am I doing wrong, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you said, because for me, you painted this picture of simplicity with the sunset, right? Like, I'm going back to what you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, and how you were talking about, how we've made it seem like we've got to go to this building where this one person is up there, and we've got to be, dressed in the right clothes and all these things, again, that are external. And instead, you got in creation, right? You got in the very thing that we talk so much about in the church, but we rarely experience it. And so I love that picture of simplicity, just sitting on the beach. Like, that to me is like just really being in the presence of the divine, and finding your own presence in this world. So beautiful. Yeah.
And I tend to think that stillness, when I learned how to do centering prayer, they said use a word, and the only word I could think of was stillness. And I used that all the time I was doing centering prayer, which is just basically being quiet and not asking anything and not saying anything and just being there. The word that I used was stillness, because that's what characterizes my life if I'm not on track, is restlessness, or my mind was always going at night. It's we've done some other things to sleep better, but I think the best thing was when I learned to still my mind, to have my mind be still, and nothing else works as good. It's just it's a practice. You've got it. You did it for 4 years, right?
Yeah. And I think the reason that it took me so long, it's the exact opposite of what I was doing in the church. I was operating out of busyness. I was operating out of restlessness, like you're talking about, Karl. As soon as we have some major milestone in the church, some big event, some Sunday where everything seemed to go right and there was a full crowd and things were good, that didn't happen very often. But you know what happened as soon as it was over? I'd go into a deep depression as soon as it was over. Yeah. Because it's like you're building up to something, but there's no payoff at the end. And so we've got to learn to operate out of stillness rather than restlessness. And that was a huge adjustment for me. It took a lot of time. And I'm sure, I feel pretty healed up now. I feel like I'm healed up to the point where when I see folks who remind me of who I used to be, I'm not angry anymore. I mean, I'm actually starting to feel sorry for Trump supporters now, Karl. Can you believe that? I look at him and I just shake my head and I was like, oh, that's so sad. I was there 10 years ago. That was me. I was one of those people. Those are my people, Right. But for a good portion of my healing journey, when they would touch that nerve, I would just still get really angry and bitter. And my whole life was about counteracting their behavior, right? But today, I posted something on social media yesterday. I've gotten to the point where I don't care what anybody believes. I don't care. Yeah, I have no desire. People will be like, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And a lot of times when the question comes up, it's like their way of like measuring your spirituality. Like, are you okay? Or are you a heretic? And I'm just like, I don't have any desire to do that anymore. I don't want to argue theology. What's the point of that? What did that ever get us in life? Where did that ever move us towards, And so I don't want to convince anybody of anything. I want to heal my trauma. I hope other people will heal their trauma. And I think that will help us all love each other better. And that's all I care about at this point.
Yeah. That kind of brings me to something, and you said exactly kind of where I wanted to go, but you said like when you were in the church, restlessness, busyness. And as pastors and even pastors' wives, like we bring people into that busyness, right? As soon as somebody new walks through the door, it's like, what can we get them involved in? And my question to you, Jason, is it because we are uncomfortable in knowing and sitting in each other's trauma? That just hit me when you said that. And I'm just like, wow, yeah. Because I know for me, like if I don't want to think about something, I'm going to go get busy.
Absolutely.
So I don't have to think about it.
Yep.
So I don't know. Like,
it's just, the church is really good at substituting for relationship.
Yeah.
We were really good at filling the space, right? I remember during services, when I was on staff at a church, but not the pastor, I had people tell me, you don't want any dead space in the service. We don't want any moments of silence because then you lose their attention, And now our life's the exact opposite, right? We want the silence. We crave the peace. We want that void because we know that in that void is where we can find that stillness and peace that we need to operate out of. And it's within us. We don't have to go looking for it anywhere. We don't have to conjure it up. We don't have to manufacture it. We don't have to have just the right tempo of music or get clapping on the right beat. We don't have to do any of that stuff anymore. We can just be, as Karl has so excellently written.
And I think that you have to get to that place of stillness, of rest, of presence in order to really recognize your trauma. It wasn't in the church that I recognized my trauma. It was when I, felt like I had to get out and I had to ask myself those tough questions, and I had to be still with myself and in the presence of nature or whatever. So I really think that there's something there. I think that I love what you said about, substituting really anything for relationship. We think we're in relationship, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of faking ourselves out.
We really are. We have programs rather than relationships, but we call them relationships.
Right. Because we're at least talking to each other. It may be very surface level, but I talked to 3 people tonight. So
right.
Having community.
I think I was probably 2.5 years into that healing process at the beach for me before I realized how numb I had become in the church. We stop feeling things because we just bury it down so long and so hard because there's no real answers, right?
Right.
We want to know why the bad things happen. But when you ask if you get brave enough to ask those questions, there are no answers. And so we just learn to stifle it down, pretend everything's okay. I'm blessed. I'm highly favored. God is pleased with me. I read my 6 chapters of the Bible this week. I prayed for an hour in my closet, but I'm too spiritual to tell you about it. I did all the things, but really I'm just numbing the pain. And so I think that's why we don't really understand the magnitude of the trauma until we get to the desert.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Sometimes when people hear you say, I don't want to hear about your beliefs, they'll think, well, then, and a lot of, people kind of moving on, those kind of theologians with radical theology and things like that, they're thinking about how, this arguing over beliefs is it's a dualistic kind of battles, and then Christianity believes something and an atheist doesn't believe in your theology. He's an anti-theist, So the point I'm trying to get to is I think, sometimes to have agency for ourselves and teach that to our kids and to advocate for other people. We're not saying don't know what you believe or don't study all the issues, get all the information and form an opinion. Right. But
I'm certainly not saying that it doesn't matter what you believe. I'm saying I don't care what you believe.
Yeah.
You believe whatever you want to believe. If it works for you, fantastic. If it makes you a better human, if it helps you find peace. And I'll tell you, for me, the fruit of the peace that I've learned to live out of, the stillness that you were talking about, Karl, for me, the fruit of that is not only do I give myself a break, but I catch myself wanting to give other people the benefit of the doubt more and more, the deeper into peace I get. Because, for a long time, hey, I always wanted to cut myself a break, but I was pretty good at whipping myself with religion and the duty and all of that. But when you're miserable under that religious weight, what do? You take it out on the people who are closest to you. And God help my children. They carried the burden of that for years and years. And I'm so glad that they don't live under that anymore. And we started having honest conversations. Our oldest, Alex, she has developed quite the potty mouth. And I love it because because for so long, there would have been spankings or severe punishment for stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But I called her a couple months ago. I still do her taxes. That's part of the penance that I do for all the crap that I put my family through. I help out in any way I can. Well, so I was doing her taxes, and I said, "Hey, I found this way that if you claim yourself as your own household now, instead of the $300 refund we thought you were getting, you're going to get over $2,000." And she said, "Are you fucking serious?" And I was immediately caught off guard, and all the religious bells and whistles were going off in my head. And then I'm like, oh, but she can be herself with me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing in the world, right?
It is.
Yeah. So you are just like, again, Karl said we don't have a script. We have nothing. Mm-hmm. But what you're talking about was going to lead me into kind of a question I had for you. So like you're at the end of your 4-year healing. Did you hear him?
I did.
We're going to have to edit that out. Anyway, so you're at the end of your 4-year healing journey, right? So how has that helped you heal your parenting? So we are all very familiar with the book that you and Brandi published called Parenting Deconstructed. And so you learned a lot through that book. You shared that in many podcasts and places. But I want you to speak just from your heart, like what you've healed Jaxon. And I think that's most important, because I don't think if you don't heal yourself, then you can't, send healing, right? You have no oxygen to give anyone else.
That's right.
So how has over the last 4 years, how have you been able to heal your parenting?
That's such a good question. Alex was our toughest one because she, being the oldest, had been through the most of our religion, of our purity culture, all of that mess. Yep. When she got into a little bit of trouble, it really wasn't a big deal, but she got into a little bit of trouble and we completely locked her down, took away car keys, took away her phone. Locked her down. And so she was the one that I start off the book talking about the day that she moved out of the house. And I was just overwhelmed with tears because I realized that my spiritual evolution happened too late to benefit her. It really did. The last 4 years that she was home with us, I was still trying to figure out who I was and what I believed, and that could change by the minute. Mm-hmm. But I'm grateful to report that about 6 months after she moved out, she texted me for something, and you know what it was? We offered to add her back to our family plan. When she moved out of the house, we had said, all right, we'd be happy to keep you on the family plan, but you cannot have Snapchat because that's the devil's app. No, we didn't say it like that, but that's how we felt. And so we were just like, we're not paying for you to have Snapchat. So a short time ago, I called her up and I said, hey, we're willing to do this and put you back on the plan to save you some money every month. And she said, well, what about like screen time and you controlling the apps and all that stuff? And I said, no, nothing like that. We just want to save you some money and help you in whatever way we can. And I said, and I'm really sorry about the way that we handled all that before. And she responded back. She said, all's forgiven. And that just meant the world to me. Mm-hmm. So if there's hope for that relationship, then I think there's hope for every parent with their kids. And I don't know everybody's story, obviously, but I do know that there's something healing about figuring out the sound of your own voice and not being afraid to use it. And when we just get authentic and we talk about our failures and we talk about the mistakes that we've made and we own them, it gives other people permission to be themselves as well. They don't feel like they have to measure up in our presence. And that's when we can feel safe to take the mask off. It's the thing we were never comfortable enough to do at church. But the three of us learned to do that on these podcasts.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that has healed relationships with our kids. The oldest three are now all out of the house.
Mhm.
And we've got fantastic relationships with them today. I mean, better than I ever thought possible. Jaxon, who is our 12-year-old, he hates the idea of church, doesn't understand why we own Bibles still at this point, and has no desire to ever be a part of anything like that again. But he also is the one who gives me the stink eye if I say a bad word. So he's still in his own little deconstruction journey, you know?
Sure.
But he's got such a sweet spirit, and he's a hugger, and I just love that about him.
Yeah.
So,
we loved meeting him a couple of years ago. He was just so fun. So fun.
I think the hardest relationship, Laura, is your marriage. I think, or your partnership, whatever that looks like in your context. Because the person that you share your life with to that degree has seen you at your best. They've seen you at your worst. They know when you're lying. They know when you're pretending to be okay and you're not. And they're the one probably who's going to call you on your crap the most. And that can be really irritating when you're healing from trauma.
Right.
And so I think that's the one that we're going to work on the longest. I mean, Brandi and I've always had a great relationship, but we're still figuring out how to be who we are around each other, because for the first 10 years we were together, that wasn't allowed.
Right. Yep. I know. And I know this sounds really strange, but like, I'm just to the point now where I feel comfortable crying in front of Karl. Like that's always been, and not because of him, but from trauma in my past. But even just not feeling like he was a safe place for me to land emotionally and just have a good cry. And, I would say probably since his stroke, I've been able to, do that a lot more. Of course, when you have a major health issue, that kind of changes the trajectory, just like deconstruction does, of a relationship. So yeah, I hear what you're saying about that. And I agree. I think we're probably going to be trying to figure it out until the day we die, I guess,
Till one of us dies and the other gets instantly better.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so fun. I feel bad laughing at that. That was really funny.
It's hard to believe 20 minutes ago Laura was the one telling us to be serious.
He used to watch shows about people that killed their husbands.
What was that called? Snapped.
Oh, yeah.
It's intriguing. That's why. Not because I was trying to learn how to do it, but like I always thought, how did they ever think they could get away with that? Like, Anyway. We digress. Go ahead.
Part of the reason, all that, you talked about your spouse being involved in the growing process and so on. And I think it's because, hard things like deconstruction and healing, like you're talking about, they're hard, right? And because they're hard, then we can't be careful enough not to trigger each other. And there's been a couple of big ones, since I've had my. And the good thing is now we know we have the tools to be with that and to change it. And that's when we talk about growth, it's because we leaned into that just that thing. Every husband and wife knows what that is. When we planned a perfect day and then all of a sudden we're in a fight.
Yeah.
And it's because, some trauma in us was triggered, and we're just reacting with the whatever brain you call it, Laura, but
the downstairs brain.
Yeah, the downstairs brains, how the second graders say it. It forces that, and we can either just withdraw and numb and ignore and get a bunch, distractions like you guys were talking about, or we can slow down and be with it and lean into it. And then it's hard work.
Definitely.
To go through that, but I think we do, anytime we try to do it, we used to do in church where we kind of, we didn't tell all the facts, it was a sales job. And so we didn't ever want to say it was hard, but deconstruction is hard and healing is hard, and growing in general, maturing, thinking for yourself, all that stuff's hard, and you can either numb it or ignore it somehow. Or you can lean into it. When we lean into it, then we can get better.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that has impressed me so much, especially with Laura, and every time I see you, Laura, I think of this attribute of deconstruction. If you start to recognize the sound of your own voice and don't stifle it, I think something happens. It almost speeds up your spiritual evolution when you become confident enough to say out loud the things we've been thinking on the inside, right? And I just wonder to myself, could I have started the healing journey so much earlier if I would have just started saying some things out loud that I was terrified to say in front of anybody? But what happened when you start speaking your mind and raising your voice? People who hear the same sound as you flock to you, and you realize we're not alone in this desert.
Right.
There's thousands of us here, if not millions of us out here in this desert, hearing the same sound. And it may have different manifestations. It might look different in your life than it does in mine. But the reality is we're learning to live out of stillness rather than restlessness. And so we can be at peace. And that's going to help us be at peace with each other in the long run.
Yeah, for sure.
And the big thing, I'm on a fixed income. It doesn't cost much, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's not complicated. And we can do it, Oh, what do I want to ask? I want to tell you a story and see what you think of this.
Okay, tell me.
In the new novel, I wrote, Jenny takes a trip to Florida, and she goes actually to Navarre, where you live.
Oh.
And but it, it's not necessarily it's fiction, so take it for what's worth. But I like when I write things that's where I get my insight from, what I write. That's how I know what I think. But when I was writing about that, eventually she gets to like one of those healing places that we're talking about, and she just sits in front of the waves, and I was imagining it from what I remembered, and she realized the waves come from somewhere else. It's not something happening right in front of her, but it's something that happened a long way away. If you think about it intellectually, it's the moon and all that kind of stuff.
The forces of gravity and the tides. And
it's coming from somewhere else. But it's still, it's authentic. It's being who it is. And it doesn't have anything to do with what's right in front of you. That guy over there didn't splash water on you. It came from somewhere else. But she realized she didn't have a lot of control of what happens to her, but two things. One thing is, it may seem small, but she can step into that water and impact it, and it's part of its nature will change and do different things than they would have done before. So even though it's big and unexplainable, it still affects her. But then she can step into it and actually affect it. And so she begins to understand, she just kind of starts getting those kind of messages, just like you said, from being out in nature, right?
So good.
Yeah. I love when that happens, but that, I usually everybody says I'm prolific, I guess that means I write a lot. It doesn't mean it's any good or anything like that.
That's not true. It's very good.
But prolific. So I write a lot because when I sit down at my beach, which is my chair in the morning, for an hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever, that's usually when I end up writing, is right after that. And it's just pulling everything together. It's getting in touch with my knowing and those kind of things. And it comes, and tons of it, So anyway, I don't know why I got off on that tangent, but that's what I was thinking about.
I was thinking about you sitting on your porch. I know in the past you've watched birds and rabbits and critters and things around in nature. What do you think it is about nature? This is a question to both of you. I don't know why I just took over your podcast. I apologize. What do you think it is about nature that helps us catch inspiration the way that it does?
You go first.
Yeah.
I've often explained it as a drum beat. You realize there's a rhythm to it. And because if you get out there before the sun comes up, the same things happen over and over, and you hear the same birds chirping up at the same time and so on. So there's a rhythm and there's a kind of an order to it. I think there's energy that's passed, especially when we touch soil with our bare feet, or tree hugger is overused, so we'll use that. But when you plant things and when you feel the earth in your hand, I think there's energy that passes in communication too.
I think that's right. I think nature is the air conditioning of the soul. Brandi she's now the plant lady. I think last we counted, we have something like 138 plants in our house right now.
Nice.
I'm not exaggerating. But the house just obviously plants produce oxygen,
yes,
but it's just so much easier to breathe in the presence of all these plants and all this life that we're just surrounded by now. And I think, Karl, I think you're right. I think, if right now I'm working on a book about Jesus, the mystic, and I'm taking some of the spiritual teachings from the Gospels and, turning them upside down. And there could be a mystical meaning that has nothing to do with religion. And, that line about creation itself testifies the rocks will cry out. Creation does absolutely, Karl, have a drum beat. And that drum beat, like in a recording studio, when musicians are recording, they've got that little drum track that provides the beat. Why? So that we can all play together in unison and not just be all over the place. And there's something, what's the word I'm looking for? It's something that like brings us back to center. About just listening to that drum beat. And that drum beat can be in the waves. It can be in the singing of the birds. It can be in the rooster crowing, as annoying as that can be at 6 a.m. It can be in a baby's cry. But the drum beat is there. And that drum beat is what brings us back to center so that we can operate out of who we really are. It just reminds us that we're part of this huge thing. And I love what you were saying about the ocean earlier. And the fact that Jenny in your story could go in the ocean and the ocean moves around her, and this huge, powerful force still bends at the presence of somebody who comes to encounter it. There's something there about the way the universe works for me. I haven't quite figured it all out yet because you just told me the story. But
yeah, in that slit experiment, I don't remember if it was molecules or submolecules, but they acted different depending on whether someone was looking at them. And, we get into all that stuff, and it's just amazing.
I think for me, like in nature, there's like so much I don't understand. So if we just go outside and we sit, I'm just like, I get lost just looking around and looking at all the trees. And like you said, the birds and the weeds, the dandelions that, just everything about nature. And I think that in that moment, I feel like it's safe to ask questions. And for maybe the first time, right? So for so long, asking questions was taboo. And here I can just, ask myself questions about creation or think about what do I think about it. I think it just causes me to wonder. And I know I've shared this with you before, Jason, but like one of the biggest things for me as a teacher of little children is to get them to ask questions, to wonder about stuff, and I love it when they ask me questions. And I love it even more when I don't have the answer, because it's like we can find out together.
Yeah.
But, something happens as we grow up, right? We forget how to question. We just, we get so stuck in the everyday. And sometimes we don't want to have to make decisions or wonder about anything, like it's too exhausting. But being in nature brings me back to that place of just wonder, that place where I was when I was younger and I could ask questions and it was safe to ask questions. And I think that's why I love it so much, because it just takes me back to a time, when it was okay. Like no question was silly, like, I think that's just it. I think it just brings me back to a place of wonder. And I love that about nature.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about books for a little bit, just for a second. So you and Brandi edited the Parenting Deconstructed. The subtitle is Navigating Your Spiritual Evolution Without Leaving Your Family Behind. Right. And we got to write a couple of chapters in there.
Yep.
So that's good. We have a stack of them we give away just for fun.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Me too.
Yeah.
Also, Laura and I have Out in the Desert. I still think of that one as active. That was mentioned in the podcast. You picked that up. But also the new book, The Diner, came out today. So when we're recording this. So
And Jason, you said you're working on a new book. Is it one that you're actually writing?
Yeah, I'm actually going to do one that all the way through this time. It's amazing. Jesus the Mystic. We don't have a subtitle yet, but I'm really excited about it, just because I think it's going to be a catalyst for folks who are coming from an evangelical background to try to tap into some more wisdom of the universe that maybe they weren't open to in the past, like I wasn't, So I'm hopeful. Should have it by the end of the year.
End of the year. That's amazing.
I would read that one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yay! I'll be looking for the review quotes for the back cover from both of you.
There you go. Done and done.
Woo-hoo.
Got it. So, Jason, I don't know. I always love our conversations, and I miss our time with you and Brandi. I think upon that fondly when we came to visit you guys and just sitting around together and talking and things like that. But if people are just wanting to touch base with you, where can they find you?
They can find me at messyspirituality.org. That's the Pathos blog. But it also has all my social media on it, and I would love to connect with anybody there. We've talked a lot about Parenting Deconstructed tonight, so I would love for folks to check out the Parenting Deconstructed podcast. Each of y'all did an episode of that, and we're going to go through the entire book, and then we're going to have some others like the Deconstructed Mamas and other folks come in on that subject after each of the co-authors has done an episode of it. But what I've really enjoyed about that podcast has been every episode we're giving away a free copy of the book to somebody who doesn't have one. So if you heard about the book and you thought, ooh, that sounds interesting, but you don't have one yet, go to Parenting Deconstructed on Facebook and just say, ooh, I want a copy, and we'll send you one.
And all the proceeds for the book, can you talk about that?
Yeah, the proceeds for the book, all the authors got together and said, we're not going to take any of the royalties from the book. For me, it was personal because I knew that after pastoring churches for 20 years, I had inflicted so much trauma that I needed to be a part of the healing process. And so we found a great organization in California that provides counseling to abused and neglected kids for free. And these are low-income folks who are struggling, and they're providing these counseling services to children to help them process their trauma. So all of the royalties from Parenting Deconstructed, all the author royalties, are going to provide counseling for kids who need it. And I love that.
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing about the whole project.
That's amazing.
I think we're done.
All right. Very good. Well, this has been fun.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary.
Remember, all that wander in the desert are not lost. We hope that you know
You are seen,
you are heard,
and you are loved.